Ever stop to think about how life actually makes its own fuel completely from scratch? Well, today we're going to dive into the two incredible processes that power pretty much our entire planet: photosynthesis, which you've heard of, and its lesser known but just as cool cousin, chemosynthesis. Let's get right into it.
So, it all boils down to this one simple question. How do living things make their own food? Now, your first thought is probably sunlight and plants. And look, you're not wrong, but that's really only half the story.
The answer really splits into two totally different paths. On one side, you've got photosynthesis, which, yeah, harnesses the power of light. But on the other, there's this amazing process called chemosynthesis, which taps into the energy that's already stored inside chemical bonds. They both end up creating life from simple stuff, but their power sources couldn't be more different.
Okay, to really get this, we've got to learn the lingo. Any organism that makes its own food is called an autotroph. It literally means self-feeder. But how they feed themselves is where things get really, really interesting.
You can think of autotrophs as the ultimate producers on Earth. They just take these simple ingredients from whatever's around them, like, say, carbon dioxide, and they use an outside power source, either light or chemicals, to build all the complex molecules that life is made of. This table right here just breaks it all down perfectly. So check out that first row, photoautotrophs. They use light and inorganic carbon. That's your classic plant, right? But right below that, you've got chemoautotrophs, which use chemicals instead of light. But then things get kind of wild with these heterotrophs, which means other feeders. Some really rare microbes are photoheterotrophs. They use light for energy, but they still have to eat organic carbon. And then, well, there's us right at the bottom. We're chemoheterotrophs. We get our energy and our carbon from the food we eat. It's a fantastic map of life's different energy strategies. All right, let's zoom in on the big one, photosynthesis. I mean, this single process is what powers almost every ecosystem we can see, from the deepest forest to the middle of the ocean. Now, here is a super common misconception. Not all photosynthesis actually makes oxygen. It all comes down to where the electrons are coming from. Some bacteria, for instance, use hydrogen sulfide, that's H2S. And what do they release as a byproduct? Sulfur. But the guys we know and love, plants, algae, cyanobacteria, they use water, H2O. And that is what gives us all the oxygen in our atmosphere. So the byproduct is decided entirely by that hydrogen source. The star of this whole show is, of course, chlorophyll. It's this incredible pigment that actually grabs the light energy. And what's so fascinating is its structure. It's built from things like magnesium and nitrogen, but here's a fun fact. There's no iron in the final molecule, but the plant can't build it without iron. And this pigment is exactly why plants look green to us. It's a master at soaking up red and blue light, but green light? Nope, it just bounces that right back at our eyes. So, how does a plant actually use that captured light? Well, it's not some kind of magic trick. It's a super efficient two-stage assembly line, and it's perfectly designed to turn sunlight into sugar. First up, you've got the light-dependent reactions. You can think of this as the power generation stage. It captures sunlight and uses it to make two really important energy-carrying molecules, ATP and NADPH. Then, in stage 2, you have the light-independent reactions. You'll also hear it called the Calvin cycle. This stage uses all that energy to actually build the sugar, pulling carbon dioxide right out of the air. But here's the key. The second stage is completely dependent on the first. No light means no power, which means no sugar. Simple as that. This table just lays it all out so clearly. Check out the locations. The light reactions are happening in these special membranes called thylakoids, while the sugar building happens in the fluid around them. But the real magic is in the inputs and outputs. I mean, it's a perfect recycling system. The light reactions make the energy carriers, which then go and power the Calvin cycle. The Calvin cycle uses them up and sends the spent carriers right back to be recharged by the light again. Talk about efficiency. Okay, so this brings us to a really, really important question, one that actually stumped scientists for a long time. A plant takes in both carbon dioxide, CO2, and water, H2O. So which one is actually responsible for the oxygen, the O2, that it breathes out? The answer, it turns out, was a totally groundbreaking discovery. The oxygen we're breathing right now comes exclusively from the splitting of water molecules by light. The oxygen atoms from the carbon dioxide, they actually end up inside the sugar molecule that the plant creates. Mind-blowing, right? Such a simple idea, but it changed everything.
So, just like any factory, this whole photosynthesis assembly line can speed up or slow down. And what controls the speed? Well, it's a mix of internal factors, things inside the plant itself, and external factors from the world around it.
Internally, a lot of this is just common sense, right? More leaves, more chlorophyll. That means a bigger factory, so the rate goes up. But here's the surprising one, the cuticle. That's the waxy layer on a leaf that stops it from drying out. It's a trade-off. If that waxy layer gets too thick, it's like putting tinted windows on your factory. You end up blocking the sunlight and slowing the whole production line down. Now, externally, light and CO2 are the fuel. As you add more of either one, things speed up, but only up to a point. Eventually, the assembly line just can't work any faster. It hits a bottleneck, and the rate totally flatlines. At that point, it doesn't matter how much more light you shine on it, the factory is at max capacity. Temperature, though, is a real wild card. As things warm up, the rate gets faster and faster until it hits this perfect sweet spot, where the enzymes are just working at peak efficiency. But if you go past that point, the heat actually starts to break down the enzymes. It's called denaturing, and this causes the rate to just crash. And here's the scary part. Unlike just running out of light, this damage is often permanent. You can't just uncook an egg, you know? Now, let's go to a world with no light at all. Deep, deep in the oceans, around these things called hydrothermal vents, life is thriving in total darkness. So how is that possible? Well, it's by using our second process, chemosynthesis. Okay, so here, the game completely changes. Instead of sunlight, these organisms get their power from chemical reactions. They're essentially rusting or oxidizing inorganic molecules, like hydrogen sulfide or iron, and they capture the energy that gets released to build their own food. This little trick is exclusive to some bacteria and archaea. No plants or animals can pull this off. They make their energy molecule, ATP, using a process called oxidative phosphorylation. Remember how photosynthesis used photophosphorylation? The name tells you the whole story. Photo for light, oxidative for chemical reactions. And what's really interesting is that while some of these microbes use oxygen, they produce just as much as they consume, which means they don't add any new oxygen to our atmosphere. So let's put them side by side one last time. The difference is pretty stark. Photosynthesis runs on light, uses chlorophyll, and gets its electrons from water or H2S. Chemosynthesis runs on chemical bonds, needs no pigments at all, and can use a whole menu of different inorganic compounds for its electron source. Two totally different paths to the exact same goal, creating life. And that leaves us with a really fascinating thought. We've just seen that life doesn't strictly need a star to give it energy. If organisms can build entire ecosystems in the crushing dark of our own oceans, powered by nothing but chemicals, what does that mean for places like the moons of Jupiter or Saturn, or planets orbiting distant stars? Where else could life's little energy factories be humming along, just waiting for us to discover them?